After waiting 18 months, we finally know why we haven't seen anything about the strategic Bitcoin reserve. According to a Bloomberg report, there seems to be a secret fight amongst two government agencies behind closed doors. But I think the bigger story here is, why are we hearing about this now? Why are we getting this leak now of all times? Now, before I break it all down for you, I do want to listen to Donald Trump's remarks about Bitcoin yesterday. And it really answers the question we've all been wondering: how serious is the Trump administration about Bitcoin? So this is what we heard yesterday. I clipped a couple of them together. I think it's actually kind of a banger. Here we go.
To me, cryptos are very powerful. A lot of people are using it. Bitcoin, they're using it at levels that I don't think anybody understands really how powerful.
Is Bitcoin in any way going to be related to this in the future? Are there plans to put Bitcoin into Trump accounts?
Well, I've become a big crypto guy only for one reason. If we don't have it, China's going to have it, and they would like to have it. But now they're not even trying that hard because we've taken over crypto. But I'm a fan. I wasn't initially. I didn't know much about it. But for some of my first term, I wasn't much involved, but I'd watch. And I watched it grow, and it's a huge industry. And I got involved in it a little bit for politics, because I realized that a lot of people love crypto. And even me as a businessman, I'd see a lot of money starting to come in with Bitcoin and, the different forms. And I said, this thing's got a lot of life. And then I hear China was going to make a heavy move on it, just like they do for AI. By the way, we're leading China substantially in AI, by substantial. And one of the reasons is when they build these big plants, I allow them to build their electric generating units, whether they use nuclear or oil and gas, whatever they want to use, they can use, except wind. We don't allow wind. Wind is terrible.
Okay, so a few things there, and sorry about how loud it was, guys. I did edit this morning. I didn't realize it was that loud. That was kind of brutal. I'm not gonna lie. Anyways, there was a few things, and oh man, it's not working on Rumble again. Sorry, Rumble guys. I'll see if I can figure it out. Anyways, there's a few things in there that I do want to unpack before I get to the strategic Bitcoin reserve news. Obviously, as we heard in that first short clip, Trump basically was saying, look, people don't really understand how powerful Bitcoin is. And I would totally agree with that. Now, you could argue that maybe Trump doesn't fully understand how powerful Bitcoin is. I could be cynical like that, but I also believe that what we are seeing, it really does add to the thesis I've been saying for a couple of weeks now, actually for a while now, that Bitcoin is, in fact, and without a doubt, a part of the, quote, monetary reset that we are currently living through. The Mar-a-Lago Accords, we know for a fact, or at least I've been speculating, and now I think we know for a fact that the Trump administration is very serious about Bitcoin. Now, you could argue why we haven't seen much follow through on it. You could say that maybe it's the Dems that are fighting the Trump administration's kind of agenda, or maybe they're incompetent, which maybe this second story is going to add to that, but it is a part of it. Now, I think the biggest takeaway from that second clip that I saw, besides the fact that, they're even talking about Bitcoin, actually one little interesting tidbit. So the context of the second clip was around the Trump accounts that went live yesterday, where, the government will give $1,000 to children if they signed up to this Trump account. Now, apparently in the longer clip, the reporter basically mentioned Anthony Pompliano, which we all know is a Bitcoiner. He was apparently in the room there. And the reporter was like, hey, I see Anthony Pompliano in here. And so will the Trump accounts include Bitcoin? Now, he obviously skirted that question a little bit, but he doubled down on the idea that he, in fact, does like Bitcoin. Though, I think the biggest takeaway here for a lot of the more cynical Bitcoiners is like, hey, I did this for political reasons. And I mean, Nico was saying it yesterday. It's like, look, Bitcoiners got Trump elected. Obviously, he knew that a lot of people are interested in Bitcoin or crypto at large, and that it was a smart political move. So we've seen a couple of dominoes fall on the game board here, which is Bitcoin is a global macro asset. And two, as a political bloc, as a political movement, maybe Bitcoiners, we don't have the juice or the pull that we think we do, but we are a part of the conversation. And being in a part of the room is the start of a bigger movement here. And so, as we've always talked about here on the show, as a lot of Bitcoiners have talked about for a long time, I would much rather have Bitcoiners in control of the government. If we are living in a time where the state isn't going to go away, and I don't really believe the state is going to go away in our lifetimes, maybe it will get diminished in power, but I don't really believe in the libertarian utopia that I once did, that, the state's going to disappear. I think the power of the state might shrink, but in the meantime, I think we are also going to see the power of the state expand as we're currently watching. So in that context, I would much rather have Bitcoiners be at least at the levers of power. Kind of reminds me of, not to do a tangent, but the whole USA red card thing. There was that clip going around of some African politician. It's like, hey, I don't like corruption, but if I'm in power, I love the corruption. Now, I'm not saying that's what Bitcoiners are going to do, but the same type of energy, same type of energy. Anyways, let's get to the actual story for today. I just thought that was good context for what we are going to hear. Again, these both dropped on the same day. And let's not forget that a few weeks ago, we saw Patrick Witt, the head, I forget his official title. It's like head of digital assets for the United States. No, head of strategic Bitcoin reserve, or head executive of director of the strategic Bitcoin reserve. I forget what his official title is. But Patrick Witt, who's basically at the head of what's happening with the strategic Bitcoin reserve, just said again a few weeks ago that, hey, there will be a huge announcement for the strategic Bitcoin reserve coming very soon. Now, that was about 2-ish weeks ago, and the timeline, he said something on the lines, it was very vague. It was like 3 weeks or so. We'll hear a huge announcement. And so, again, all the timing of this happening right now does make me think that we might be hearing some new update on the strategic Bitcoin reserve. So that's my context before I get into this article. So I took this from Yahoo, but it was first reported on Bloomberg. Again, you guys know I don't have a Bloomberg account, and I can't bring up the archive on it on YouTube. So here's the Bloomberg article through Yahoo, and it goes, Trump Bitcoin reserve faces hurdles as departments seek control. The Trump administration plans to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve have been complicated because two government departments vying to run it, alongside questions about which has the legal authority to do so. Going further, of course, the strategic Bitcoin reserve was authorized, or rather was created by the executive order by Donald Trump, over 18 months ago, as part of the plan to make, quote, America the crypto capital of the world. His plan intended to have it housed under the U.S. Treasury Department. As we all know, that's under Scott Bessent, with the Bitcoin coming from asset seizures conducted by different parts of the federal government, which we have, in fact, seen since. Obviously, the big contentious one was that 100,000 coins that came from China, or the pig butchering scheme, and we added, allegedly, another 100,000 coins. So now we're roughly around 320, I think it was 8,000 coins. Again, no audit. We really don't know. This is a trust me, bro moment. But I think here is the part that we've all been wondering, along with possible new purchases. We've been hearing this idea for a while that, for now, the strategic Bitcoin reserve is simply just going to be any Bitcoin that comes into the U.S. government, we're not going to sell. Obviously, we've seen some obstacles and debacles happen with the U.S. Marshals. They lost some coin. They've seen some very bad custody heading over there. There's been some contention about how they are going to custody that coin. It looks like this is the issue that we're hearing from the federal level as well. So, going further, however, a concern arose about whether the Treasury Department was legally able to manage the crypto trove, according to people familiar with the matter who were not authorized to speak publicly. Now, multiple parts of the administration are involved in crafting a plan to ensure the strategic Bitcoin reserve is legally viable. So, as we've seen with a lot of the Trump agenda, he may want to do something. There may be an executive order to do something. And then, as we've seen recently, the Supreme Court will probably strike it down. It seems like this may be also what is happening here. They're trying to see how they legally are even capable of doing this. So bureaucracy strikes again. Anyways, putting it inside the U.S. Commerce Department is one possibility. Again, said by people who were not authorized to speak publicly, which would be Howard Lutnick. So you're seeing what is happening here. Is Scott Bessent and Howard Lutnick now fighting over who controls the strategic Bitcoin reserve? An overarching issue is whether the Bitcoin can be housed indefinitely as the executive order intended, given the volatile nature of the cryptocurrency. Now, that's just like whatever. Anyways, quote, President Trump campaigned on a vision of cementing America as the global capital of cryptocurrency and other cutting-edge technology, said Liz Houston, a spokesperson. Quote, to deliver on the president's vision, the Trump administration continues to evaluate the best structure for a strategic Bitcoin reserve and U.S. digital asset stockpile. Now, going further, the Justice Department chimed in. They said in a statement that its Office of Legal Counsel is, quote, working closely with both the Treasury and Commerce Departments to determine legally available options to accomplish the president's policy of establishing a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Spokespeople for the Treasury and Commerce did not respond to requests for comment. And of course, Trump had ordered the two departments to jointly develop strategies for buying more Bitcoin in budget neutral ways. So now, 18 months later, we have seen the conversation go, well, like, hey, yeah, we are going to actually buy Bitcoin. As we've heard for a long time, we heard Scott Bessent come out and basically say, like, yeah, we're not going to buy any more Bitcoin. We're just not going to sell the Bitcoin. Now we're at the point here where the seeds are being planted that, yeah, actually, we have been looking and working towards, quote, budget neutral ways to buy more Bitcoin. So planting the seeds. We heard Patrick Witt say this about 2-3 weeks ago, saying a huge Bitcoin strategic reserve announcement was coming. Now we got a report from Bloomberg from, unnamed sources, which who knows who that could be, saying, yeah, we are still working on the legal process to have a strategic Bitcoin reserve, but they did slide in buying more Bitcoin. So, my tinfoil hat is starting to go up, but I'll expand on that a little more. To wrap up this article, the internal competition and legal quandaries have affected what's intended to be a major pillar of Trump's administration pro-crypto agenda. Currently, they hold about $20 billion of White House. Going further, we've heard this in the past. The White House said, Trump said that the Bitcoin sales have cost the U.S. $17 billion over the years. And of course, you heard Trump's comments at the beginning of the show, essentially saying, yeah, we are very adamant about Bitcoin. We love Bitcoin. And actually, one little tidbit before I kind of give you my read on what all of this is saying. I was watching my boy Nolan. I love Nolan. I always mess up your last name. Nolan Barler. Sorry, dude. I can't roll my tongues. And Brandon Gentile. He did a really good podcast that I highly recommend. And Nolan made it an interesting point. The idea was, and I was kind of making this point yesterday in regards to the Saylor sales and how it was most interesting to me, the irony of the situation that on the week that Saylor sold Bitcoin, the price went up to about 64K. And then on the official announcement of him selling Bitcoin, aka not actually selling Bitcoin, the price dropped. And I was making the case yesterday that it's super interesting, and I think very obvious to everyone here, or at least should be very obvious, that Bitcoin is driven by narratives. And as we saw yesterday, that's exactly what happened. Anyways, going back to the conversation Nolan had with Brandon, Nolan was making the same case. It's like, look, guys, Bitcoin is a psychological commodity, and it is driven by narratives. Bitcoin is narrative driven. And in the first Trump term, Trump basically had the best attack on Bitcoin when he flippantly said, like, yeah, I'm not a fan of Bitcoin. Everyone kind of ignored Bitcoin. Again, now everyone's chasing the SpaceX, AI, IPOs, et cetera, et cetera. All the hype is in the AI, and Bitcoin is just forgotten. It's not cool. It's not shiny. It doesn't have the gains, baked into it. It's not priced into the gains. Everyone is forgetting about Bitcoin right now. But what we are seeing currently, at least in real time, is the Trump administration, or even just the polarizing cult leader that is Trump, come out and basically say, like, I'm a fan of it now. He's like, I'm very interested. He even acknowledged that in the clip. He's like, yeah, my first administration, I didn't really get it. I wasn't really a fan. Now I understand it a little more, and I'm actually a fan. Bitcoin is super powerful. The people in Bitcoin are extremely smart. Bitcoin is a huge industry. And let's not forget, he did slide in the, like, I made a bunch of money off my rug pulls in that clip, but hey, you know, whatever. You guys know my thoughts on that. But as you're seeing, if Bitcoin is a narrative-driven commodity, if the price, as we've seen recently, really reacts to the narratives that are being built out, you're seeing the seeds being planted right now. Patrick Witt, again, a few weeks ago, says a huge announcement's coming. Now we're getting a leak from Bloomberg saying, like, yeah, actually, there has been a fight going on for how the strategic Bitcoin reserve will actually be implemented between the U.S. Treasury and the Commerce Department, which is Scott Bessent versus Howard Lutnick. And personally, I'd be on Scott Bessent's side. You know, I don't have to get into all the details, but Scott Bessent's kind of a beast. And so it's starting to make me think a few things are coming down the pipeline. One, obviously, who knows what this announcement's going to be that Patrick Witt has basically teased. You know, we got an announcement of an announcement a couple of weeks ago, and now we're starting to get leaks come out of the corporate press. And remember, I've been bringing up this idea that anytime we hear a news story come out of the corporate press, whether it's Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, et cetera, we always have to think in terms of why do the, quote, elites, the powers that be want us to be thinking about this now? Like, what are they trying to do with printing this article? Is it a distraction? Is it them planting the seeds for potentially huge Bitcoin buys? I'm kind of leaning towards the latter, though I am a bit cynical about whatever this new strategic Bitcoin reserve announcement will be. I feel like it's going to be a nothing burger, but I've been very adamant. Actually, we've been very adamant here at Simply Bitcoin that the U.S. isn't simply going to make a huge Bitcoin announcement and then sit on their hands and not do anything. If you're smart, essentially what you do is you make this announcement. You got to basically legally do that. I don't know if it's actually a legal law, but you kind of have to telegraph what your moves are, but you don't telegraph your buys. This whole time, I would not be surprised if they have, in fact, been accumulating in, quote, budget neutral ways. Maybe this article, this leak here about a secret fight being exposed between the U.S. Treasury and the Commerce Department is part of that distraction. Again, Trump essentially said it in that second clip in the beginning that, hey, China wanted to make a big move. That's why we made our preemptive big move. And throughout this time, they wouldn't just make an announcement and not make a move in Bitcoin. They wouldn't just announce they're going to do it and then like telegraph their intention to not actually buy some Bitcoin. It just makes sense to me that you would say you're going to get into it, basically front run any China announcement here, because it's always been framed as, oh, if we don't do it, then China's going to do it. And throughout this whole time, you see this article here from, a fight between two agencies on whether we can or how we can buy some Bitcoin. And I wouldn't be surprised if we get a news story coming out here pretty soon saying, oh, wait, actually, sorry, guys, okie doke, we've actually been buying Bitcoin this whole time. As I've been mentioning in regards to the U.S.-Iran war, misdirection has been a part of the foreign policy, the military policy here. It's basically what Trump does. He comes out, he kind of does the Homer Simpson thing, like he's, a big old idiot, doesn't know what's going on. And then behind the scenes, the wheel moves and then they do something completely opposite. And you're always wondering, like, wait, is he manipulating the markets so that he can get better buys? Is he distracting all of the enemies, a la distracting the city of London, aka distracting the Chinese officials? Like, what exactly is going on with these announcements? Or rather, what is going on with all the misdirection? As we know for a fact, actually, it hasn't been officially stated, but if you're just following along on the news, you know that misdirection has been part of this whole global geopolitical reset that we are currently living in. We really don't know. The fog of war meme is part of the policy here. They are distracting you. They are saying things, letting things leak to the public so that people get a certain idea of what's happening. And then later on, we'll see, as most people call it, the taco, the Trump always chickens out. We'll see something come out publicly, and then behind the scenes, something else entirely will happen. And then it's like, that's the big news story. That's the big splash. So reading all of this, one, I wouldn't be surprised if, in fact, we have seen a fight between Scott Bessent and Howard Lutnick. As someone in the chat was saying in the beginning of the show, we've seen Scott Bessent getting literally 6 fights in the last year and a half. Most notoriously, or most infamously, is the whole idea that Scott Bessent basically gave Elon Musk the black eye that we all saw. So we do know that Scott Bessent is he's a beast, all right? Like, he worked for Soros. He basically crashed the pound. He knows financial engineering. He's very familiar with the geopolitical macro situation and how to rewrite the plumbing. And I'm fully convinced that Bitcoin is a part of the strategic moves, the macro geopolitical moves that we are seeing coming out of the Trump administration. I think they are very serious about Bitcoin. Now, what are the actual hangups for them not being able to implement what they want to do? We could lean back on what we saw from the first Trump administration, or at least what the narrative was, is that the Democrats would fight against everything the Trump administration wanted to do. We've seen that happen. Now, if we take this report, this leak on the surface, or rather base it on the words, then maybe we're seeing some, bureaucratic fights happening right now. Treasury versus the Commerce Department. Obviously, Scott Bessent wanting to control the strategic Bitcoin reserve, and Lutnick wanting to control the strategic Bitcoin reserve. Obviously, Howard Lutnick's at Cantor Fitzgerald, or at least his son is now, and we know that Lutnick has huge Bitcoin holdings. He's been very adamant about the fact he will always buy Bitcoin. So I wouldn't be surprised if there is an actual fight going on between Bessent and Lutnick on who actually controls this. Now, there is obviously the legal discourse of how to, one, custody these assets, which we have heard that leak again in regards to the U.S. Marshal story. Or two, whether it's even legally viable for them to do that. Obviously, if we're basing this off the Constitution, which for all intents and purposes, and don't throw your tomatoes here, most politicians don't really work off of right now. It does say they can't actually hold Bitcoin. It says what? Coin, gold and silver coin, or whatever the official. I'm sure someone in the chat will give me the official decree again. Or is this just all misdirection? Is this simply, this leak here, a misdirection to, I think, catch China a little flat-footed, making it seem like, oh, they still haven't done anything. Awesome. We still have some time. And then the big whopper will come out and it's like, oh, wait, actually, we've been acquiring hundreds of thousands of coins. We hold 500,000 coins now. I wouldn't be surprised by any one of these stories. But again, personally, my view of this whole thing, my read on this for a while is that the U.S. government has, in fact, been accumulating Bitcoin. Now, do we know what this, quote, budget neutral way is? No, I've been very cynical and said that the best budget neutral way is for them to just do asset forfeiture. They basically just steal it from you, AKA a 6102 type order, but this is using more law enforcement. So where do we stand with the strategic Bitcoin reserve? Literally no one knows. At this point, no one really knows. But finally, 18 months later, we do get, I wouldn't say an official announcement on it, but we are starting to hear information about it, which does, in my mind, paint the picture that it is kind of building the momentum towards whatever the next announcement will be. We didn't get a timeline on when this announcement will happen. All we got was a few weeks from now, and that was a few weeks ago. So maybe it's coming soon. And further, we know what's going on with the Clarity Act. The big banks have been fighting the Clarity Act. We do know that the Trump administration has been starting to put their weight behind the Clarity Act. We know Scott Bessent has been very vocal about passing the Clarity Act. Obviously, the Bitcoin senator, Senator Lummis, has been working diligently to try to get that across the finish line. We didn't get the July 4th deadline. Now, I think the next date is July 17th when they're officially going to have a meeting, though now the timeline has basically been moved back to about August before they go on recess, and then they come back for the midterms. So there is a lot to get done here. The time is running down. There is not much time on the clock, though. Little interesting caveat here for the whole midterms, kind of the Republicans losing the midterms. There was a huge contentious controversy that happened with a leading Dem, candidate. So it looks like if this continues, it almost looks as if the Republicans might be able to save themselves in the midterm by the skin of their teeth. Again, you could go look up what I'm talking about with this Democrat candidate here. He got himself into I don't even know how to say it nice on YouTube here, but he got himself into a controversy here. So it looks like maybe the Republicans might be able to maintain their power in the midterms as of now, as of where things are going. So if that is the case, then maybe we can still hang our hat on the idea that the Clarity Act might get pushed through either end of year or sometime in 2027. But again, if the Republicans do not maintain the midterms, then we probably won't be seeing this until, 2028, 2030. Most people are saying 2030. So there's a lot of moving parts going on right now. So I'm really excited to see, well, actually, I'm not that excited, to be honest. I think it's going to be a nothing burger personally. Maybe I'm just cynical. It's bear market. I'm tired, boss. I'm worn out. And usually all of the announcements, the official announcement is a nothing burger. But if all of this is building up towards the US announcing that we have in fact acquired more Bitcoin, whether you think that's a good idea or not, that is definitely going to add to what I've been saying, what I was saying that I relayed from Nolan of Bitcoin being this narrative-driven asset. If we do get that news coming out here very soon, which is what they've been saying, also at like the bottom of a bear market, I don't know. I wouldn't be waiting for that Q4 October Bitcoin bottom to all I'm saying here, okay? I would not be waiting until October if we do get that news coming out that they've been acquiring Bitcoin. Again, narrative driven. If that news does come out, then the rest of the world is on notice. They have to move very quickly, very swiftly, pun intended, to try to acquire Bitcoin, to try to get rules of the road in. If we get the Clarity Act as well, even if I don't think it's probably the best bill, it's definitely going to kick the can, or hit the domino rather. Sorry, not kick the can. That's the bad one. It's definitely gonna set the dominoes down where every other country now has to take Bitcoin seriously. We are the Bitcoin superpower of the world. And I have a good report from River to really give us the numbers here, which I'll follow up here very soon. But look, Strategic Bitcoin Reserve finally back in the news. It's been dead for months. We haven't heard anything about it. Literally everything about it we haven't heard. We were supposed to get an audit. We haven't got an official audit. We were supposed to get, either some Bitcoin buys in or at least more accumulation. Or we were supposed to hear about how they were going to custody this Bitcoin reserve. Obviously, there's been a lot in the news recently, in particular, the war in Iran, which has been taking all the headlines. We're supposedly going to get the Clarity Act. They got the Genius Act through. The Clarity Act seems to have lost a little bit of its steam. But we're back in the news. Let's see what the next announcement will be. But reading between the lines, again, it does seem like they're planting the seeds for this story of, oh, yeah, we've actually been acquiring Bitcoin, or we plan to acquire more Bitcoin. And here's how they do it. But to me, that just doesn't make sense. Why would you telegraph every single buy? You would say you're getting into Bitcoin. You dump the price 50%. You get the market makers to dump the price 50%. You acquire Bitcoin at a 50% discount. Then you announce that you've been acquiring Bitcoin, and then the bull run starts all over again. It would be a pretty genius move. I'm not going to lie. It would be kind of an epic move. But here we are. Finally, a new announcement. really sounds like, you know, again, taking this on surface level, that there's just a bureaucratic fight right now. And then just the classic joke. Are we surprised that it's taking the government this long to get their shit together? It's like, it's just par for the course, right? It's almost like the private market, the free market, can move way more nimbly than any government can, than any bureaucracy can. And so I guess a lot of us Bitcoiners, we just forget how politics works, how slow it really works. And here we are. You could say this is a nothing burger, but I think this is leading towards a bigger announcement that we'll hear about very, very soon. So we'll be waiting. We'll be watching. We'll see what happens. We'll see what this strategic Bitcoin reserve announcement is, whether it's a nothing burger or not. But I think it's going to happen here very soon. We're going to get a real definitive update on where it currently stands. As of now, all we know is, hey, we're arguing about it. But I guess at some point, at least it's still part of the conversation. It hasn't fully died, which is kind of the cynical view I've been having for a while, that I'm like, dude, as Trump said in the beginning, it was all just a political move. He acknowledged the political move, and on the very same day, we get a report that, yeah, we're actually doing more for the Bitcoin stuff. So further, for those that do partake in the midterms, it does seem as if they're building that, or at least trying to build that political goodwill of, hey, Bitcoiners, hey, I know you guys got us elected here, but don't forget about us in the midterms. Look, we're actually doing some stuff. It's coming, I swear. that might be what is actually happening here. But again, we always got to remember, and this is what I constantly think every time I see articles, why are they leaking this now? Why is this in the news? What do they want us to think? What do they want us to believe? Hence why I'm speculating. I'm trying to see the different attack vectors, see the different kind of plays being done right now. And that's the best that I can do here. There's something brewing here, but we won't know until an official announcement. Change is at hand. I agree. It is all theater, but it affects money, so it's real. Yeah, 100%. 100%. Anyways, as I said, it's taking this long because they are changing history. Okay, I like that. As I said, I do have a new report from River Financial. Shouts out to River. They ran the numbers. Remember running the numbers meme? They have ran the numbers, and it does confirm what this story does, that the U.S. is in fact the Bitcoin superpower of the world. Now, it might not be from a legislation front, but the numbers are pretty interesting. And then to source, trust me, bro. And then to wrap up the show, we brought back our boy, CJ. I always mess up your last name. Konstantinos. We're going to be talking about, I'm going to ask him some macro stuff, what he feels. And then, of course, he is running People's Reserve. So we are going to be talking about Bitcoin as collateral, obviously mortgages and Bitcoin and how this all connects. So that's today's show. I will be right back after our first commercial break. Here's the part that nobody says out loud. Buying Bitcoin on an exchange and leaving it there isn't buying Bitcoin. It's buying an IOU. And the last decade has been a masterclass in what happens when those exchanges don't deliver on their promises.
Bitcoin Well is a self-custody Bitcoin platform. That means that when you buy Bitcoin, it goes straight to your self-custody Bitcoin wallet. You actually own it from the very first transaction. They're available both in the United States and Canada. Pricing is transparent, straightforward, and no nonsense. And if you're buying a larger amount of Bitcoin, Bitcoin Well Infinite gives you concierge-level support through a dedicated executive Bitcoin advisor, premium help for when it actually matters.
You can also stack a little extra through the referral and wishing well rewards. A nice bonus on top of the owning your own Bitcoin thing. So go to bitcoinwell.com/simply and sign up for the Bitcoin Well portal today and buy Bitcoin you actually own. Paper burns, paper floods, Paper fades. If your seed phrase is written on paper, it's not really backed up. It's waiting to disappear. Stamp Seed's DIY kit lets you hammer your seed words directly into commercial grade titanium. Fireproof, crush-proof, waterproof, and permanent. Once your words are in the metal, they aren't going anywhere. Use code SIMPLY at stampseed.com for 15% off anything in the store. That's stampseed.com, code SIMPLY. All right, before I go on, guys, Rumble chat, sorry, I don't know what happened, but finally streaming on Rumble. Dude, I love the Rumble team. I love the Rumble platform, but I think my streaming software has been having issues or something. I don't know what's going on. Anyways, the current Bitcoin price is $63,900. The discount from all-time high is 49.4. The market cap 1.28 trillion, and the block height 957,067, 957,067. So, I thought this would be interesting to add to today's show, considering the whole idea. Wait, sorry. Off topic. RL, yeah. Opti, I was watching the old Simply videos and came across when you unmasked yourself. Do you have that on the wall of mementos? I don't have it here. I should bring it here. It's in my apartment. I have it in my apartment. Of course, I'd still have that thing. Yeah, you guys could go back. I don't remember what episode it was, but I used to wear a gladiator mask on the show, and I unmasked live on the show. Anyways, I thought this was very interesting as a kind of addendum, in addition to that first portion of the show, where we do talk about Bitcoin in terms of what's happening on the federal level. Obviously, we are a news show, so we do talk about Bitcoin in terms of what is the breaking news and what is going on in the public consciousness. And a lot of that has been this idea of the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve, the Clarity Act, Trump's quotes and remarks about Bitcoin, Scott Bessent's remarks about Bitcoin, the Trump administration and their interest in Bitcoin or their holdings in Bitcoin, because that is what's the common view, or rather, that's what's been in the news, and that's what the headlines are really talking about. But River Financial dropped this report, and it really just adds to, caveat here, PSA, context. Sorry for everyone out there that doesn't like America. But hey, this is an American show. We are Americans. Bitcoin is global, but I do have, a little bit of American patriotism here, okay? So now with this report from River, it literally does, in my mind, one thing. It just shows that with or without the laws, America is already the Bitcoin superpower of the world. Now, if we have some favorable laws, obviously that would enhance the use of Bitcoin. It would attract more capital to Bitcoin. And further, if the U.S. starts to fight Bitcoin, then obviously Bitcoiners will probably move. Hence, that's part of the feature of Bitcoin, is that I can literally get up and go. But this report is very interesting. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but River posts this. America is the global Bitcoin superpower. I would add America is already the global Bitcoin superpower, with or without anything done by the Trump administration or the Clarity Act. Now, here are the numbers. According to our own research, America holds an estimated 42% of all Bitcoin. For perspective, America holds 34% of global wealth, produces 26% of global GDP, and has 4% of the world's population. America's Bitcoin dominance is more pronounced than most other economic metrics. You can see here, Bitcoin holdings roughly 42%. And the U.S. has 34% of the total wealth. So a lot of the wealth is really held by American Bitcoiners. And maybe going full 1776 here, maybe it just has to do with, the entrepreneurial spirit of Bitcoin, or rather of Americans that get Bitcoin. Hey, I'm just off the heels of July 4th, okay? To you anti-Americans here, you're going to have to deal with me. I'm gloating a little bit, okay? Anyway, Bitcoin ownership in America is widespread. According to the Nakamoto Project, an estimated 49.6 million American adults, or roughly 18.6%, own Bitcoin, compared to 28.8 million, or 10.8%, who own gold. So as of now, as of this research, more people own Bitcoin than gold. And we know gold is what? I don't know what its market cap is, but in the $20-30 trillion market cap right now, Bitcoin barely holding on to $1.5 trillion right now. What's that mean? Hey, there's still a lot of room to move in market cap. But as of now, even though gold has a lot of the mind share, more people own Bitcoin than gold. Going further, obviously, a lot of the global hash rate, a lot of the Bitcoin mining is happening in America. Today, 37.5% of Bitcoin's global hash rate is running in the US. That is more than the next 5 countries combined. Now, this one, there is some nuance here. Obviously, personally, I do not want all of the Bitcoin mining to be in one jurisdiction, whether that's in America or not. But as of now, Americans are dominating the hash rate, okay? So, hey, to all of you guys everywhere else that is not America, you guys got to get the hash rate up, bro. Get your hash rate up. Okay, now going further. More than 115 Bitcoin companies are headquartered in the U.S., including as well as 50-plus mining sites that each draw over 10 megawatts of power. Bitcoin companies and mining sites in the U.S. 150 plus Bitcoin companies headquartered in the U.S. I don't know if we're on this one, River. I hope we're on this. Hopefully we're one of these little dots down here in South Florida. 50 plus Bitcoin mining sites. Bitcoiners are already dominating the Bitcoin company space. Obviously, the main one being Sailor and MicroStrategy. They hold the most Bitcoin. Obviously, BlackRock also getting into Bitcoin. All the big banks getting into Bitcoin, hedge funds, etc. Like, it's becoming very obvious. Now, I can maybe make the case that part of this is because whether you know you don't like the facts or not, the U.S. is the richest country. We are the financial powerhouse of the world. Hence, you could say, I don't know, if you lean more towards the collectivist viewpoint here, is that, you know, we have all the money, therefore it makes sense that a lot of us would get Bitcoin, though that has been kind of opposite to the narratives that we've heard for many years, that those with the weaker currency will understand Bitcoin better. Now, this could be disproportionate in terms of because we have more capital, hence why we make more of a, I would say, like a footprint into the space. Maybe there is a lot of people in third world countries or around the world, in Europe and, you know, Africa, China, et cetera, Japan, Korea, et cetera, that are Bitcoiners, but maybe they just don't have the giant capital that, you know, the American financial centers do. So you could get, I could see where people start talking about like the inequality of wealth in that situation, but you know, we don't listen to the collectivists here. Okay. Anyways, U.S. public companies hold 1.24 million Bitcoin, or 92.7% of all Bitcoin held by public companies worldwide. American public companies added 510,000 Bitcoin in the past 12 months, more than 3 times the supply of Bitcoin mined over the same period. Actually crazy. Then obviously we, at least of now, we have the biggest unaudited Bitcoin treasury, strategic Bitcoin reserve. U.S. government has allegedly 328,372 Bitcoin. The UK at 61,245, UAE 20,000. And I saw this very interesting. China at 15,000 Bitcoin. I don't know where they got these metrics. I don't know what research they're looking at. Because for most intents and purposes, everyone has been looking at Bitcoin treasuries over here, which say that that China has about 190,000 Bitcoin. So I found that very interesting that River is saying that China only has 15,000 Bitcoin. This is from Bitcoin Treasuries, Arkham Intelligence, and Wu Blockchain. So it looks like China kind of nuked their strategic Bitcoin reserves. And if this is the case, you know, I'll take River's research team over just me doing it, and I'll look this up for you guys as well. It looks like the U.S. is undoubtedly winning the strategic Bitcoin reserve race. If China dropped 175,000 coins, that's crazy. Maybe this is just the known official holdings of China. But I thought this was like the most interesting aspect of this. Obviously, I did start this with America being the Bitcoin superpower of the world, but River's latest research is saying China only holds 15,000 Bitcoin. Super interesting. Now, of course, pro-Bitcoin administration, U.S. Congress is pro-Bitcoin, Senate 67% pro-Bitcoin, House is 65% pro-Bitcoin. Guys, America is the Bitcoin superpower of the world, whether it's from the legislative stance, which arguably we can say that we really aren't. There are some more favorable jurisdictions, at least for us Bitcoin individuals. But River just ran the report. 2 stories here. Will we get the strategic Bitcoin reserve buy announcements here soon? And then the facts of the matter that, hey, guys, the U.S. is the greatest country in the world. I had to do it. It's July 4th, okay? It was July 4th weekend. Okay, anyways, I just saw CJ popped in here, so I am going to hit the ads, and we're going to be talking about, I'm going to ask him a little bit, like I said, a little bit of the macro. We're going to be talking about Bitcoin as collateral, and then, of course, People's Reserve, where you can use Bitcoin for your mortgages. So I will be right back. And then we're just going to have a free-flowing conversation. I love talking to CJ. He hasn't been on in a long time. Highly recommend you guys stick around. If you don't know who CJ is, he provides a lot of value, a lot of signal. This will be one of those conversations where you're going to have to rewind it because CJ he lets it rip sometimes. All right, guys? So quick commercial breaks, and I'll be right back.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, Ledin. Here's something most Bitcoin holders never figure out until it's too late. You're sitting on wealth you can't touch without selling. Ledin fixes that. Bitcoin-backed loans. You keep your stack, you get cash. And they just introduced their lowest rates ever. No complexity, no fine print. The larger the loan, the lower the rate. These new rates apply to all new loans, refinances, and renewals. You'll see all the rates up front before you apply. The new, lower rates come with Ledin's gold standard protection. Your Bitcoin remains custodied and is never lent out for interest. Perfect 8-year track record of keeping clients' assets safe. Auto top-ups, LTV alerts, and partial repayments to keep you in control. Repay whenever you want with 0 penalties or monthly payments. Ledin's perfect $10 billion track record through every market cycle in the last 8 years speaks for itself. Don't choose between a great rate and the safety of your Bitcoin. Get both at Ledin. If you ever thought, what happens to my Bitcoin if something happens to me? Or what happens if I lose my phone? You're not alone. For a lot of people, the biggest barrier to self-custody isn't buying Bitcoin. It's the fear of making a mistake. And that's why I like BitKey, and I recommend it to my friends and family. BitKey is a Bitcoin wallet built for real life, not just for day one, but for everything that happens in between. Lost devices, upgrades, accidents, and long-term ownership. There's no seed phrase to write down and worry about losing, and no single point of failure that can lock you out of your Bitcoin forever. What really stands out about BitKey is the peace of mind. Recovery is built in. Inheritance is built in. It's a complete self-custody system built by the team behind Square and Cash App, designed to make holding your own Bitcoin simpler and safer. Take self-custody of your Bitcoin today using BitKey. Go to bitkey.world and use promo code SIMPLY for 10% off your new BitKey. That's bitkey.world, promo code SIMPLY. I want to give a shout out to our partner, HIVE Digital Technologies. Fueled by clean energy across 3 continents, HIVE runs dual engines, Bitcoin mining and AI compute. Their AI platform is ranked #1 in the world for network performance, and it's doing something bigger than compute. It's accelerating human discovery, the science, the breakthroughs, pushing humanity further and faster. Listed on the NASDAQ with the ticker HIVE. Catch the latest buzz at HIVE Digital Tech on X or HIVEdigitaltech.com.
You secured your Bitcoin, but did you secure your devices too? They're still broadcasting your location and digital footprint. GPS, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, cell, 5G, EMF, all of it is leaking. Escape Zone fixes that. Their Faraday bags block every signal your device emits, so you decide when you're detectable, not the grid. Built for Bitcoiners who know sovereignty isn't just your wallet. It's your phone, your hardware wallet, your keys, and your entire digital life.
Go to escapezone.com/simply and use code simply for 10% off. That's escapezone.com/simply, code simply.
All right, CJ, man, it's been way too long. Let's do audio check. You said you can hear me.
Yeah.
All right, I got you. All right, man. Well, dude, I do want to talk about People's Reserve and Bitcoin as collateral and Bitcoin mortgages, etc. But first, man, I haven't talked to you in a long, long time. And I always love your macro takes on things. So maybe could we do just a general summary of where do you think we currently are right now? Like, what is the macro landscape from your opinion? Because I think there's been a lot of noise. There's a lot of distractions going on, and a lot of people are uncertain about what's going on. I mean, I was thinking about even covering this today. Like, we're seeing some interesting stuff happen from the Bank of Japan. You know, we're seeing central banks acquire more gold than ever. We just saw I believe it was the Federal Reserve say that they're going to be dropping dollars. Like, we're in a very strange macro landscape right now. So CJ, what are you looking at, and what is your general read on the overall geopolitical macro landscape?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me on, man. It's great to be back. I love Simply Bitcoin, and I love your audience. True, real Bitcoiners, best Bitcoin community there is, in my opinion.
Thanks, man.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. And yeah, I mean, look, where are we at in the price cycle, right? Like the psychology of the market cycle. We're at $60,000 and everybody's saying Bitcoin is dead. What a joke, right? I mean, $60,000 was a freaking pipe dream when I first started. If you told me Bitcoin was going to 60K, I told you, yeah, maybe by the time I die. But we've already been to 126 and we're back down to 60. Right. And it's the exact baby crier mentality of people who can't, have a longer time frame than just a year. And, for people like us who have been in this for over a decade, this is normal. This is how price discovery works. So it's very interesting to see that, the psychology of the market doesn't change, which Bitcoiners should learn from that. We should learn about the opportunities that we have because of this cycle that is created out of the psychology of people who come, put their money in, watch the price go down, get scared, don't understand what they own. Some of those people turn into people like us. For me, it was the first run up from a couple $100 all the way up to $1,200 and then all the way back down to a couple $100 where I was like, all right, what the hell's going on here? What is this? Right. And then you actually start to do some real research to figure out what Bitcoin is, how it works, what's money, what's currency. And that's where we are right now for a whole new onboarding class of people. Right. So we have the class of 2013, class of 2014, when did you get your orange pill is what class you're in. Well, there's a new class of 2026 who watched it go from 126 down to 60, which isn't that bad, by the way. We had to deal with 80 and 90% drawdowns. You guys get 50% drawdowns. I'm a little bit jealous, right? Because there were times I was scared. I'm like that meme where this water is pouring down. I'm like, oh my God, did I just ruin my entire savings account? Like, what's happening here? You guys got it easy, minus 50%. This is a breeze. But look at where we are in the marketplace right now. We are watching the biggest players in the space, not just individuals, institutions are adopting Bitcoin. Right? We have the Bitcoin ETF. We have integration of Bitcoin into different products and services. We have digital credit. We have a lot of things going on right now in Bitcoin that nobody saw coming just even a few years ago. And that today it's now here and it's a reality. So it is absolutely unbelievable where we are just in the psychology of the market. Now let's take that psychology and place it into the macro, like you originally asked. What I find so interesting is that obviously interest rates are the dynamic here that matter most. It is 100% interest rates are driving liquidity. And right now there's over $8 trillion still sitting in money market funds from the interest rate hiking campaign that we saw take place in 2022. And what was the motto of that hiking campaign, right? What was the reason that we're in this macro scenario right now? They wanted to raise interest rates to slow inflation. And when you raise interest rates, you punish the economy in order to slow inflation. And therein lies the problem. Inflation is not a result of economic activity. Yeah, you can have increased economic activity and therefore have an increased supply against a limited demand, and that forces prices to go up temporarily. But producers take that higher price above their cost, reinvest that profit to expand supply, and that drop prices back down. And when prices go back down, more people can participate. And now the producer is selling more units at the same multiple or better, creating economic activity and economic growth. That's natural. But what we see is not natural. It is not natural for a central bank to come out and say, we're going to raise interest rates to slow the economy when the economy itself is not the source of inflation. Okay, what is the source of inflation? We all know what the source of inflation is. It's the printing of the monetary currency units, the political currency units. The budget deficit is the largest it's ever been. It keeps going up. And we had one chance. Elon Musk, the guy who can catch freaking rockets falling from the sky, had a chance to go in there and cut the budget and get all of the waste, all of the fraud, all of the abuse, get rid of all of it. It didn't happen. Lynn Alden says it best. Nothing stops this train. Not even the smartest, best, most rich entrepreneur in the world with political support can stop the train. It is gone. Doge is gone. It's done. There's nothing to cut here. Nothing to see here. These are not the droids you're looking for, right? This is, it's magic. It's gone. It's lost. Therefore, what happens is the budget deficit requires increased circulating units of currency. At this point in time, we're running over $2 trillion deficits. At the same time, higher interest rates have punished the economy. Well, when you punish the economy, you get lower tax receipts. Lower tax receipts means less tax money to actually pay for the bills in the budget. Therefore, you have to print even more money to pay for the bills in the budget. So what they did was they said, we're going to punish the economy for the sins of government money printing. And now we're really going to reap the rewards of that horrible decision because the economy is struggling. If you guys pay attention to economics, and I know it's boring, I know it is, but there's some important information you can get from it. Atlanta's Fed GDP now just fell off a crater. The economy was humming at 4%. The economy was strong. It's the best economy, best economy we've ever had in the world. There's never been a stronger United States economy ever. Well, wait a second. It just fell off a cliff. It just went from 4% all the way down to like 1.2%. What the hell happened? The economy is paying the price of higher interest rates. The demand from the economy is going down. Yet the supply of these goods and services remain the same. Prices are starting to come down. The interest rates have frozen the real estate market. All of the capital gains and real estate investments and refinancings are cratering. The real estate market is frozen. Taxes are going down. The deficit is going up. We are running into a situation now where interest rates will need to go down. And I personally believe, Trump, he was fighting with Powell. He didn't like Powell wouldn't lower the rates. He went and got Warsh, and now the narrative, which is different than the reality, the narrative is that Warsh is a hawk, right? Rates got to stay high. Do you think Trump would have picked a guy who did the opposite of what he wanted to do? This is about narrative control. This is about the Fed maintaining the perception of independence from the sitting administration. And it worked. It worked perfectly. Everybody is talking about how rates are going to stay the same. The market is projecting that rates will stay the same or even go higher. Some of the banks came out and said they're actually going to raise interest rates. So they got the market exactly where they want them, which is to think that Warsh is going to do what he's going to do, regardless of what the Trump administration thinks. I completely disagree. Yeah. I think the economy is on the brink of absolute collapse, because the real estate market is frozen, and now we even see the GDP numbers collapsing towards zero. What that means is interest rates are going to have to go down. And the main effect of that is that the $8 trillion that is sitting in money market funds right now, the only reason it's sitting there is because the government is paying them over 4% to sit there and wait. But when the government says, well, now we're only going to pay you 3.5%. Now we're going to pay you 3%. Now we're going to pay you 2.5%. Now we're going to pay you 2%. I don't know what that magic number is. But at some point in time, the number will go below that magic value. And when it does, all of the savers that are sitting in the money market funds, all of the $8 trillion, a vast majority of those trillions of dollars will come out of the money market funds, and they will flood back into the markets. They'll flood back into stocks, real estate, Bitcoin, gold, silver. It's going to be outrageous. We are heading for another inflationary pop that really can't be fought against, because the economy did what it could do since 2022. It's been 4 years of the economy paying for the sins of government money printing. There's no more payment we can do until we hit that critical spot. And the soft landing is lowering the interest rates before the economy really shits the can. Because then if you get into an emergency crisis scenario, you have to print 10 times the amount of money. They know they got to print, but they just want to print enough to get by. They don't want to print for an emergency crisis. So I think what we're doing is we're coming in for that landing. Interest rates will go down. And as interest rates go down, eventually we'll get to that point where that $8 trillion probably comes back down to around $2-3 trillion. So we have $5-6 trillion sitting on the sidelines right now, happy because they can collect their 3.5% to 4% from the government. But once they can't get that anymore, they're going to be forced to be turned from savers back into investors. And what do you think they're going to invest in? They're going to invest in the things that have that the prices are depreciated right now. Is that AI? Hell no, it's not AI, but it is real estate. It is Bitcoin for sure. It's probably some gold and silver too, even though they went into breakouts. So that flood of liquidity is coming. And nobody knows exactly when it's coming, but it is coming. And if you're not on the Bitcoin train when it comes, you are going to miss, I think, one of the biggest moves that we're going to see in Bitcoin. I think diminishing returns is going to be put to rest. And we are going to see a full-on panic into hard assets that supply cannot be expanded that easily, specifically real estate. And of course, Bitcoin with finite supply, you can't increase the supply at all. And the only way to get the existing supply back onto the market is a higher price. That dynamic is going to create massive returns for those who are patient in Bitcoin. And at that point in time, you get to take advantage of some new fun products like what we're building to unlock that purchasing power without giving up ownership.
Love it. I love it. CJ, it's so good to have a fellow bulltard back on the show. I say this constantly, but everyone's like, Opti's got a 42 IQ. So you come on, do a little, short, sweet bit, kills diminishing returns. I love it. Actually, one more thing before we get into Bitcoin as collateral, because I do want you to do the summary of Bitcoin as collateral before we go into the People's Reserve and what you just launched. But what is your view on the 4-year cycle right now?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question, because the 4-year cycle to me is always based on the halving, because the halving, what people don't realize is they look at it from the investor standpoint, but I look at it from the mining standpoint. I look at it from the cost of earning the block subsidy. And whenever you have a halving, the cost to earn the block subsidy doubles. That means that for miners, they need to ask for a higher price. And if you look at a lot of people who were selling coins through this process, yeah, there were some OGs that were diversifying, but look at what the miners did. They sold a lot of their treasury, and a lot of them even pivoted to AI, and we're looking for additional revenues in AI. What does that mean? That means the price of earning the block subsidy went below the market price, and that's an issue because they don't have that profit that they have. So they need to ask for the coins that they are earning. They need to ask for a higher price, or they need to shut down operations. And if they shut down operations, we see the hash rate drop. But here's where the real magic happens. When the hash rate drops, the difficulty declines, which then increases profitability for the miners who are remaining. So we have this self-sustaining mechanism that has really been simplified into this 4-year cycle. But I do believe that beyond the halving cycle, where we're looking at the cost of earning the block subsidy relative to the market price of the token, which is BTC, then what happens is you get this supply demand factor. And the supply demand factor is like a valuation model, right? So you have actual economics, companies spending money to earn Bitcoin and then needing to sell those Bitcoins to make a profit. That's one functionality. But then the other functionality, which really isn't tied to the 4-year cycle, but is playing a really big role right now, is that supply demand dynamic of liquidity. So of course, I mean, I think MicroStrategy just sold over 3,000 Bitcoin and the price went up from 60,000 to 63,000, right? So if the biggest holder of Bitcoin, or one of the biggest holders of Bitcoin, is actually selling Bitcoin and the price is going up, that means you have a really highly liquid asset. And that's a real strong value proposition on Bitcoin. So when liquidity comes back, when the supply of dollars is no longer parked in the money market funds, and that supply now needs to find a new home, and those supplies overpower the existing demand that we have, the lack of demand right now turns into an abundance of demand against the supply where people have already rotated out of their Bitcoins, you're going to see massive price movement. So personally, I think that there are multiple components. You have the 4-year cycle, and then you have the basic supply demand. At this point in time, it seems that they're matching up. And funny enough, they happen to match up more often than not. So I really love that $210,000 block period that pushes in that 4-year window for the halving cycle, because it seems that the psychology of the market cycle, the macro cycles, the business cycle, the credit cycles, they're kind of all on this like 4-year time frame. And that's kind of like the sweet spot. And thank God the creators of Bitcoin were able to identify that when they were figuring out when a halving should take place, how many blocks should go by for each halving, because I think it's a blessing in disguise that all of these cycles are kind of timed up together. And I do believe, you know, as we go into the end of the year and interest rates start to go down, there's going to be a lot of synergy between the 4-year cycle and the new price discovery cycle of Bitcoin, making up for that massive influx of dollars, which is just a ticking time bomb right now.
Yeah, love it. I love it. Okay. I think a good place to start before we get into what you've built at People's Reserve is for the newer fans here, the newer family in the chat that you haven't been on in a little while. So I want you to lay your thesis for Bitcoin as pristine collateral. And I think that would work perfectly into what you guys have built at People's Reserve.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, Bitcoin, we think of Bitcoin as engineered money. That means we're taking something from the natural and we are engineering a solution from the natural, right? So we have fire and it gave us light, but then we engineered a component for electricity to give us light. So the engineered version of something is always better, right? We had the horse and we had oxen pulling stuff, and then we created the engine, and now we have horsepower in the engine. So the engineered version of something is always better than the natural version. Well, we have gold and silver. That's our natural money. And we've engineered Bitcoin. And Bitcoin solves a lot of those problems that gold, we discovered through the lack of efficiency in gold and silver settlement. So when we look at gold and silver and we said, why isn't gold and silver a pristine collateral? It's a great form of collateral. It's a great form of money, but it's not pristine. Why? Well, because you have to pay to transport it and to settle it. And it could take time. You could lose the gold. How much gold is sitting on the bottom of the oceans from ships that didn't make the trip back from the United States back over to Europe? Quite a bit. So there's a lot of risk when it comes to settlement with hard money in gold and silver. Bitcoin takes that and says, yeah, you know what? We're not just going to have this type of settlement here where we have these types of risk. It's going to be digital, and it's going to be 10-minute times, and it's going to be finite. And it's going to be, you know, when I say finite, I don't mean by supply, I mean by transaction finality. Once that is put into the block, there is no reversing it. Once you settle, you're settled. You don't have anything to worry. And it's 10-minute settlement time. Traditional system is looking at 1, 2, 3, sometimes even 4 days of settlement time. And if you're transporting gold, you're talking about weeks of settlement time, right? So the traditional system says, how do we fix this problem? Well, let's not use gold and silver as collateral. Let's just use government debt as collateral, right? And then you start to move to the banking ledgers where banks can settle T+1, T+2, T+3. And it's like, okay, well, this is great because we solved the problem that we had. Gold was hard to settle. And now we have these treasuries. Now we have this debt, and those are easy to settle. Problem solved. Yeah, but we created a new problem, right? Because one of the problems that gold and silver solved was that the supply was not easily expandable. Right? If you have seashells on the seashore, well, then there's a whole bunch of them. There's a plethora of them, right? If you use yap stones, there's a plethora of them. You can find them. You can make them. Gold and silver come with cost and are hard to find and pull out of the ground and to refine. So that limited supply expansion created a strong characteristic of money. We lost that characteristic of money with debt because debt notes can be expanded ad infinitum with just a single vote. Like I said, we're spending $2 trillion more than we have in our current budget. Where do those $2 trillion come from? They print them. They print them out of thin air. And each one that's printed steals the purchasing power of the existing dollars in your pocket and in your savings account in order to have those dollars enter into circulation. And that's the new problem. So we solved one problem, but we created another. Now Bitcoin enters the scene and says, all right, well, don't worry about it, boys. I'm going to solve both of these problems. I'm going to solve the supply expansion problem that was created by debt by having absolute digital scarcity, 21 million, and that's ever it, finite. Then I'm going to solve the collateral problem with settlement by having 10-minute block times. And since it's the internet economy, doesn't matter where you are in the world, in 10 minutes, you can settle. So we learned those characteristics from gold and silver. We learned a couple more issues from government debt. Bitcoin comes on the scene and says, I'm going to take the best from gold and silver, the best from this paper debt. I'm going to combine it into this new asset called Bitcoin, into this new protocol. And that's what makes Bitcoin a pristine collateral. The best from hard money, the best from the paper money, combined into a digital protocol that allows for 24/7 liquidity, 24/7 settlement in 10-minute block times. You can't beat it, and that's what makes it pristine collateral.
Absolutely love it, CJ. Love when you rehash that for everyone. Okay, so People's Reserve, you were talking about this happening. You were building behind the scenes, finally launched, and almost like, I don't know when the timing was, but literally almost when you launched, we saw the big headline of the Fannie Mae mortgage-backed Bitcoin loan. It seemed a little clunky. It seemed a little clunky for, the average person. So let's here, let me pull up the website here. I do got the website here. Let's talk about this because obviously, if you've been in Bitcoin for a long time, there's always that one, example that everyone goes back to is like, yeah, well, how is Bitcoin money? You can't use it in real life. And you're like, wait, I got this. Like, I got the perfect product to make sure that you can buy one of the most important things for most people, which is a house. So maybe start with what is the People's Reserve, and then let's get into how does this mortgage-backed Bitcoin loan work for the average person out there?
Yeah, so I think the best way to start here is just to kind of share my story with the audience who doesn't know it yet. But in 2019, I bought my first house with a portion of my Bitcoin savings. And at that point in time, my wife was pregnant. I was living with my father-in-law, actually. So we were just in a position where we needed to get our own house. And of course, it always works like that. You buy Bitcoin, price goes down. Right? You sell Bitcoin, price goes up. Like you can't beat it. You can't time it. So of course, in the middle of a freaking bear market, I have to buy my house with a portion of my Bitcoin savings. I spent 100 Bitcoin on a single family home, a single family starter home. I paid 100 Bitcoin. Well, guess what? Not that long ago, those 100 Bitcoin were worth over $12 million. Today, those 100 Bitcoin are worth over $6 million. Guess what? My house, it's not even worth $500,000. If I had to sell my house today, I'd be lucky to get $400,000 for it because I'd have to fire sale it just to get liquidity. So that is what created People's Reserve. The fact that I ran into a problem, I did not have a solution where I could put my Bitcoin up and acquire one of the hierarchy of needs to acquire a property that I could grow my family in. And thank God, my wife is pregnant again. So we have kid number 5 on the way. And I grew my family in this house. So I don't regret it because those memories are worth more than everything that I have. That's what life is about. Life is about experience. It's not about how much money you make or how much money you can spend. It's about experiencing it with the people around you and getting that richness of experience inside of who you are and letting that transform and mold you and turn your kids into who you want them to be. That's what life is really about. And there wasn't a tool for me to do that. And of course, again, going back to the timing, in 2019, there was DeFi out there. I could have borrowed against 200 Bitcoin and had a 50% LTV, a safe LTV. Well, guess what? 6 months later, COVID hit. And during COVID, you guys remember, nobody could log into anything. You couldn't log into BitMEX, couldn't log into, it was all the systems were overloaded. The price of Bitcoin dropped from roughly 10K all the way down to below $4,000. I would have been liquidated. So there was no, thank God I just sold the Bitcoin and did what I needed to do to buy the house because I would have lost 200 Bitcoin instead of just 100 Bitcoin to buy the house. So for all of those reasons and for that entire experience, that is the foundation of People's Reserve. We wanted to create a solution for people who have been responsible savers of Bitcoin, who want to unlock the purchasing power of their Bitcoin without giving up ownership, without creating a taxable event, without missing up on the upside of all of that Bitcoin. but at the same time, being a way to benefit from your savings. Bitcoin is not just about, when you think about Bitcoin as pristine collateral, it's not just about saving it and spending it. It's about using Bitcoin as a financial tool, as a pristine collateral, which gets you access to lower interest rates and better opportunities. That's what Bitcoin does for the individual because it's an engineered money. And those characteristics reduce risk for the lender. And when you reduce risk for the lender will turn around and reduce your cost of capital. It creates a win-win scenario for both borrower and lender. And that experience and that thesis is the foundation of People's Reserve.
Absolutely love it. Okay, so CJ, let's for someone out there, if there's someone watching this show, obviously, like I said, we all heard it in the news, the whole Fannie Mae backed Bitcoin mortgage loan. And you're telling us here, it's like you can have repaying mortgages and get no liquidation, which was one of the things on the Fannie Mae. So could you walk through the technicals? Like, how does this work for someone? If they're hearing this pitch for the first time, they were thinking about buying a house, you know, they got the Bitcoin, they just didn't really want to sell their Bitcoin. Maybe they didn't want to take a loan out to get the cash to do the Bitcoin. So how does this work? Can you walk through the technicals for the audience out there and show them how you simplified this process?
Absolutely. So the first and most important thing is when you think about borrowing against Bitcoin, what immediately comes to your mind is, whoa, there's a lot of risk here because I'm borrowing against Bitcoin on margin. So I have to babysit my LTV. If the price of Bitcoin goes down too far, I can get liquidated and I can lose all of my Bitcoin. And, you know, that's not really worth it. That's a very risky value proposition. So when we created this product, the first thing, and it was really great actually to see the Better Homes actually mimic what we had introduced to the marketplace, which was these no margin call, no liquidation type loans, because I believe this is the future of Bitcoin powered finance. And we actually have it in our bond product as well. When you borrow against a Bitcoin bond, no margin calls, no liquidation risk. But in the mortgage product, the way it works is we dual collateralize property title and pristine collateral. And when you put both of those together, we can eliminate margin calls and liquidation risk. So even if the price of Bitcoin temporarily just goes to zero for whatever reason, we don't believe that. But even if there's some people out there that do believe that, especially some of the people that we work with are coming from the traditional side and seeing the advantage of utilizing Bitcoin in financing because you're getting lower interest rates, which increases affordability. But the first thing to understand is no margin calls, no liquidation risk. And then the most important question to ask is, well, how can I lose my Bitcoin? So let's get that out of the way right away. You can lose your Bitcoin the same way you would lose your house in a traditional mortgage. You don't make your payment, right? So if you don't make your payment, you have 15 days before your payment is actually considered in default. So on day 15, you will receive a notice of default. But here's another component. When you receive the notice of default, you don't get liquidated. You have 90 days to cure the default. So basically you have around 105 days to make sure that you can get back into good standing before your Bitcoin is even at risk. This is a part of People's Reserve's philosophy, putting the customer first and making sure the customer can protect the most important asset that they have on their balance sheet, which is their Bitcoin savings. So that kind of addresses, you know, margin calls, liquidation risk. Let's get into the product itself. We have two different products, a self-repaying mortgage and a Bitcoin mortgage reserve. Now, our flagship product is the self-repaying mortgage. That's the product that I originally came up with based on my experience of buying my house and the requirement of the self-repaying mortgage is that you need to post 100% of the purchase price of the home, right? And that's already a big update, right? Because if you go borrow from somebody else, they make you initiate that loan at 50% LTV. So if you want to buy a $500,000 house, you need to post $1 million worth of Bitcoin. Then you have to deal with margin calls and liquidation risk based on price volatility. With People's Reserve, if you want to buy a $500,000 house, you post $500,000 of Bitcoin. It gets dual collateralized with the property title, and you do not have to worry about margin calls and liquidation risk, and you can get your financing. Now, in the self-repaying mortgage, at the end of the loan, you get back 100% of your Bitcoin. So when your loan is paid off, all of your Bitcoin comes back to you. Now, what about during the loan? Because it is a 30-year loan. If the price of Bitcoin goes up during the loan, a couple things take place. Number one, you can always rake back that collateral. So we work with BitGo as our qualified custodian, and they will hold the Bitcoin on both TrueFi, which is the exclusive liquidity provider for People's Reserve's Bitcoin mortgages, and the customer. So they're the middleman, the qualified custodian with insurance and the whole 9 yards. So if the value of Bitcoin goes up, you can always rake back whatever Bitcoin you don't want to be there and just maintain that 100% LTV ratio. However, if you keep the Bitcoin in the account and you let it continue to grow, for every 10% of growth in your collateral ratio, People's Reserve will actually reduce your interest rate. So we will re-amortize the loan every 30 days. And so intraday volatility won't matter. But over every 30-day period, if Bitcoin is able to grow 10%, so you can imagine during a bull market, every 30 days, your loan's re-amortized and your monthly payment is being reduced because your interest payment is being reduced. And it works both ways, right? If Bitcoin drops in value by 10% over a 30-day period and doesn't recover, then your interest rate can go up. But even if your interest rate, even if Bitcoin drops to zero, the amount that your rate can adjust is very limited. So we're talking about 20 basis points adjustments here. We're not talking about massive usury rates. People's Reserve is a US-based company, and we have to conform within the existing usury laws. And our whole point is to empower the customer with lower interest rates, not to suck value out of you. So you'll find on our site that we have the best interest rates in the world for home buyers. Now, here's the exciting part. The starting interest rates range from 5 to 8%. And traditional mortgages right now are around 6.5%. So you can get as low as 5% at 100% LTV. But here's where the real magic happens. If you over collateralize and you have a 33% LTV, our interest rates are from 4% all the way down to 1%. So you can get from 1 to 4% if you over collateralize with a 33% LTV in the SRM. And again, at the end of the loan, you get back 100% of your Bitcoin collateral. Now, not everybody is in a position to post $1.5 million of Bitcoin for a $500,000 house. What about the people who are just starting out or who are starting out recently, or people who even were just saving up cash to make a down payment on their house? This is the second product that we came out with due to community demand. And a lot of people who want to buy that $500,000 house, they either have $100,000 in cash saved up for their down payment, or they do have $100,000 of Bitcoin saved up. Well, with the Bitcoin Mortgage Reserve, you only need that 20% of the purchase price of the home. So the $500,000 home, you only need to post $100,000 of Bitcoin and you can get financing. Here's the trade-off. At the end of the Bitcoin Mortgage Reserve, you don't get back any of your Bitcoin, and up to 50% of the Bitcoin is working for you to pay off your debt. We call it a Bitcoin equity engine. And what's amazing about this is, over time, like if Bitcoin can maintain a 30% compounding annual growth rate, your 30-year mortgage will be paid off in year 8 because you've leveraged Bitcoin as a pristine collateral and you've allowed that Bitcoin growth over that time to eliminate your debt for you. And that's a really powerful concept, because if you don't have to make mortgage payments for 30 years and you only have to make them for 8 years, or let's just say Bitcoin doesn't do 30% CAGR, maybe it only does 15% CAGR. Well, at the 15% CAGR, your mortgage is paid off in year 14. So you can very easily shave off over half the amount of time of your mortgage by utilizing Bitcoin as a pristine collateral within our Bitcoin Mortgage Reserve product. And it's just a really powerful way for people to obtain a home. So we have both of those products. The SRM for people who have the ability to post 100% LTV or even post over collateralize and minimize their interest rate and get back all of their Bitcoin at the end. Or we have the BMR for people who only have saved up 20% of the purchase price of the home in Bitcoin. Post that into the Bitcoin Mortgage Reserve. 50% works for the lender, 50% works for them to pay off the debt. That's it. That's it from a 30,000 foot view.
Amazing. I didn't even know the Bitcoin mortgage one, but one of my friends is he's a Bitcoiner, but he's super adamant about real estate. He's like, yo, I want to get a duplex. I'm trying to get my cash flows up. And I'm always like, dude, like just buy some Bitcoin, bro. Like eliminate all the complexities. And now while you were gone, I was like, oh, hey, maybe I can make both of these strategies work here. So that was super interesting to me. But if someone is interested in this, do they just go to peoplesreserve.com? Like, what is the onboarding process for this?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to peoplesreserve.com, you can check out anything you want, but then you just click sign up. and you join the platform and you create an account. Obviously, it's just like any other platform. It's free to create an account, and you can explore around, fill out your mortgage application, get in touch with us. We also created the Digital Real Estate Association of Members. We call it the Dream Team. These are Bitcoin-powered finance certified real estate agents. And we have real estate agents all across the country that are ready to work with you to help you, number one, understand and feel comfortable with the mortgage contracts that we've drafted. And then secondarily, to help you find your dream home. So it's an entire ecosystem that is designed to serve you from the point of you deciding you want to buy a home all the way to the closing table and even beyond, because on the People's Reserve platform, that is the servicing agent for TrueFi, which is the real estate fund, which is the liquidity provider for the mortgages. And you service and make payments all the way through there. You can pay from your collateral if you have an SRM, or you can track the value of your Bitcoin mortgage reserve account and see how close the Bitcoin is to paying off your loan and making you debt free, which of course is a really important concept. But I love that you brought up the real estate thing, Opti, because we've actually talked to quite a few syndications and real estate fund managers who understand exactly what your friend understands, which is, look, even if you buy Bitcoin and you save in Bitcoin, you still need cash flow to live.
Yeah.
Right. You still need to go work. You still need some form of cash flow to live. And based on Gresham's law, if you're saving Bitcoin, especially at this point, Bitcoin isn't even old enough to drink, right? You need to be 21 years old to drink in the United States. Bitcoin can't even drink yet. We're in the baby years of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is still growing up. You don't want to get rid of your Bitcoin right now in the very beginning of price discovery, at the bottom of the S curve of adoption. We are nowhere near where you want to be selling your Bitcoin. So those people who try to live off their Bitcoin, it might be an okay decision, but my personal position would be you buy Bitcoin and you hold it and you use it as a collateral, but you use your cash flow to pay your bills. And that's the magic here, is that some Bitcoiners who are savvy on real estate as well are seeing a real potential here. Instead of creating a syndication and raising $5 million to buy a beautiful beachfront property that you can rent out on Airbnb, raise the $5 million, buy Bitcoin, come to People's Reserve, get your financing and buy the house. Now you have Bitcoin working for the upside for you. You have a better interest rate than you're going to get from the TradFi guys, lowering your monthly obligation, and you're still renting it out. So there is a way to leverage your Bitcoin, to use your Bitcoin with no margin calls and no liquidation risk, obtain the property that you want to obtain, rent the property, and utilize that traditional strategy. Use the rents to cover your interest payment, and whatever is left over, the same way you would do it in the traditional method, is your profit. And your profit is your cash flow, and your cash flow pays for your life and allows you to increase your savings in Bitcoin. There is some really exciting stuff coming down the line. And I think all of real estate investing is about to change, because who in their right mind would just buy real estate when you can buy Bitcoin and still acquire the same amount of real estate for a cheaper cost of capital, utilizing the same strategy, but increasing your bottom line, boosting your profits through Bitcoin's performance and the property's performance? It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, 100%. That's what I was thinking. I'm like, wow, okay, this does look like, it's like, wow, I can maybe even do this. I'm like, oh, okay, hey, this is crazy. But you hit on what my second question was going to be to follow this up. It is, I think a lot of people don't realize like how big this actually is. Like they don't realize how big the mortgage lending market is. And like you just kind of mentioned the savvy real estate investors. We all know if you talk to any, again, sorry guys, but sorry Bitcoin boomers, but if you talk to any boomer out there, they always say the same thing. It's like, hey, just get into real estate. This is how you build wealth. And now we have this new addition, which is Bitcoin. So could you explain to people just how big this idea actually is? Like, I don't think a lot of people realize how big the mortgage lending industry is and how much capital is in it. And like, could you just give like a basic, again, 30,000 view of what this actually is and how big of a market that you're dealing with?
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you talk about mortgage-backed securities, which are when banks write mortgages, then they package them together and they sell them off. Nobody really wants to buy them. So Fannie and Freddie have to buy them to support the marketplace. but there's over $12 trillion of mortgage-backed securities. And when you talk about home loans and other things like that, it's upwards of like $30 trillion. So this is a massive, massive marketplace. Real estate is probably one of the largest sources of wealth in the world, which is why it has that reputation with the older generations. Real estate is arguably earlier generations' form of Bitcoin, right? People were buying homes on the beach for 50 grand. People, I mean, like where I grew up in Ocean City, New Jersey, my family had a property there that they bought for a couple $100,000. And, you know, decades later, it's worth a couple millions of dollars. And, you know, that's Bitcoin, right? We bought Bitcoin for 150 bucks. It's worth 60 grand now. So real estate was the previous generation's Bitcoin opportunity. But this generation, and what David said there is it. The mortgage business is so big, it wrecked the global economy in 2008. And that was one of the reasons. Those bailouts were one of the reasons that Bitcoin was created. But what's really interesting about the mortgage business is what we are doing with our partner, TrueFi. Because TrueFi, as I mentioned before, is the exclusive liquidity provider for our Bitcoin-powered mortgages. And what TrueFi does is they do what the banks tried to do, but they do it the right way, right? The banks wrote these ninja loans, no income, no job applications. What? You're going to lend money to people with no income and no job? That sounds real smart, right? And then they write all of these loans and then they package them together. And what they package them into is like a special purpose vehicle. They call it a mortgage-backed security. And they were in cahoots with the ratings agencies who rated these things AAA. And then they sold them off to pension plans and investors as a fixed income product. But they were shit. When you opened it up and you looked in here, what was in here? Oh, there's a couple good ones in here, but everybody else has no income and no job. And you know, what do the banks care? We don't hold the risk on our book. We're selling it to the suckers and we're making a fortune because we're selling 30 years of cash flow for the net present value of that cash flow. Probably one of the best business models in the world. So TrueFi comes along and says, they actually have a really good business model. Where they messed up was they took advantage of people by screwing people over and putting no income, no job loans into this. But what happens if we create a Bitcoin mortgage-backed security? What happens if we take the traditional loans and we say, these are too risky, right? Just like the stock valuations are off the charts, real estate valuations are off the charts. It's unaffordable, too risky. But let's add Bitcoin component. Now we have property title, promise of the payer, and pristine collateral. We have a strong three-legged foundation that we can build this product on top of. And we have Bitcoin mortgage-backed securities. We call them a sound money mortgage series. So TrueFi will take together the Bitcoin mortgages that they write, package them together, and then sell that sound money mortgage as a fixed income product to credit investors. And credit investors care about two things, credit ratings and yields. And what Bitcoin does is, or what our Bitcoin mortgages do, it creates extremely low risk, right? If someone's buying a $500,000 home and they post $1.5 million of Bitcoin, that's a 25% LTV because you have the 1.5 million of Bitcoin plus the 500,000 property title. That's $2 million securing a $500,000 loan, 25% LTV. Even if they only do 100% LTV and you have $500,000 securing the 500 plus the $500,000 property, that's 50% LTV. So our mortgages and the SRM side are originating at 25 to 50% LTV for the SRM. But for the BMR, that's 500% LTV, right? Because now you only have 100,000 protecting the 500,000 purchase price, but you also have the property at 500,000. So really you have 600,000 protecting the 500,000. That's at 83% LTV. So we take these 25 to 50% LTV SRMs and we package them up with these 83% BMRs. But remember how the BMR functions. The SRM is very low interest rates. The lowest rate is 1%. That's right, 1%. On the BMR, the rate ranges from 3 to 6%. But remember, the borrower who posted the Bitcoin collateral is splitting the upside with the lender. So as Bitcoin performs, we get outsized returns. So when you package these things two together, something magic happens. You get low risk with high reward. And that's what we're doing. So I love David's comment about how mortgage-backed securities crash the entire economy. in 2008 and led to the creation of Bitcoin. Now, here we are all these years later, and Bitcoin mortgage-backed securities are going to redefine the low risk, high reward fixed income opportunity in the marketplace.
Yeah, it's actually incredible. I do have one question that I want to wrap this up about what you just said, but there is a good question in the chat by someone who said, so how do the monthly payments work with these two options? I think the audience is they're getting a little interested here, CJ.
Yeah. Well, it's a regular amortization. So it's 30 years and it's principal plus interest. And of course, you know, when you buy a house, you have to get insurance, there's taxes, there's some other ancillary costs that you have to be aware of. But the monthly payments are based on the sum of money that you borrow over a 30-year amortization based on your interest rate. So if you go onto our website at peoplesreserve.com, you can go in the top right corner and see our calculators. We have some amazing calculators. You can plug in your personal numbers and see exactly what your monthly payment is going to be. But fair warning, before you show the wife the numbers, just be sure that you're willing to deal with the Zillow outfall, because it seems that the wives are having a lot of fun shopping on Zillow again now that things are affordable because you have pristine collateral.
Love it. Love it. Okay. All right. Just put a bow tie on this whole conversation. Looking ahead a little bit with the level of Bitcoin adoption now and how it's growing, and products like yourselves, People's Reserve, making it easier to use Bitcoin without selling. What is your outlook from here on into the future for how this changes everyday finance and helps more people, as you say on your website, truly build wealth smarter in a Bitcoin world? So looking forward, I don't know how far you want to look ahead, 5, 10 years, you know, maybe move from the present to the next couple of years. How is this changing traditional finance? You touched on it a little bit before we went to how the monthly payments work, but I think this is a good bow tie to wrap up today's conversation.
Yeah. And I think the most important thing is that when it comes to Bitcoin, if you are a sound money guy, right? If you believe in sound money economics, if you are a gold and silver bug, if you care about that stuff, I think you're already in Bitcoin, right? Pretty much anybody who cares about money versus currency, finance, like you're already aware of Bitcoin and you probably already hold a position, right? Even Peter Schiff holds some Bitcoin, right? So we've pretty much onboarded every sound money advocate that you can onboard. So the real question for Bitcoin is, what's the next wave of adoption look like? And today, in a psychology of the market of blood in the streets, People's Reserve has over $250 million of borrowing demand from right now. We are on day 3. We already have $250 million of borrowing demand. Bitcoiners are out there. They've been waiting to buy a home. They've been waiting for interest rates to go lower, but they haven't pulled the trigger because interest rates have remained high and they haven't really gotten an opportunity to take advantage of their savings of Bitcoin. Now, with that opportunity to unlock that purchasing power, the Bitcoiners are coming out of the woodworks. 250 million of demand. We just opened up our wait lists less than a month ago. This is unbelievable. But what's more important is not just the Bitcoiners who want to come and buy their home, but the non-Bitcoiners that we're talking to. And that's what's so interesting to me. It's the traditional people who have heard from friends and family about what People's Reserve is doing. They haven't dipped their toes into Bitcoin yet, but they understand one thing. I saved up $100,000 to make a down payment on my $500,000 home. The bank is trying to tell me I have to borrow at 6.5%. At 6.5%, I'm going to pay more in interest over the life of the loan than I did for the damn property when I bought it. That's ridiculous. So, you know, where can I get a reasonable interest rate that, number one, makes my monthly payment affordable, but then number two, gives me some type of advantage? Any type of advantage, right? Because if you don't even have the 20% down payment, now you got to pay private mortgage insurance and your payment goes up even higher. So what I find super interesting is it's not just Bitcoiners who have come out of the woodworks at a low point, you know, during a pullback market to the tune of $250 million, but it's the new customers who are coming in and saying, hey, we heard from a friend or a family member that if we take this $100,000 and buy Bitcoin with it, we can come to you and we can get a lower interest rate. And that Bitcoin will work for us to pay off our debt. And if we go to the bank, we're locked in for 30 years and we're locked in at that rate unless we refinance. But if we come to you, we're getting a lower rate, a lower monthly payment, and Bitcoin can pay off the debt for us in 8 years or 14 years. We want to learn more. How do we do this? And that's what's so exciting for me, because when you say, what does it look like moving into the future? The next wave of Bitcoin adoption is going to be based on use case. And one of the biggest problems in the United States of America right now is home affordability. We are in a home affordability crisis. The president and his administration ordered Fannie and Freddie not that long ago to buy $200 billion of mortgage-backed securities in order to temporarily reduce interest rates. And guess what? Interest rates are now higher than they were when they did the $200 billion of buy to help relieve pressure. So interest rates are not going down in the free market anytime soon, especially on the long end of the curve, right? On the 30-year end of the curve. In the front end of the curve, the Fed can state the rate whatever it wants. But outside on the long end of the curve, the market's going to do what the market does. And those rates have gone up, not down. So when it comes to affordability and how do we solve the problem of the everyday American who's going to work, working hard, delivering value to the economy, earning money, spending less money than they earn, and building up a savings. And I'm sorry if you're doing that in dollars because you're getting worked. But if you're, at least if you're doing it in Bitcoin, or learn why you should be doing it in Bitcoin, it's because it's going to make your home more affordable. It is going to accelerate your path to home ownership. It is going to solve your problem. And different companies like People's Reserve and all of the builders in the Bitcoin space, we are trying to leverage Bitcoin in a way to solve your problem. And home affordability is one of the biggest problems in the United States. And I think moving into the future, this solution, it's not just about what it does for Bitcoin. It's about what it does for the everyday person getting value from Bitcoin. Most Bitcoiners right now, we get value because we bought it and the price went up and now we can buy more stuff. But what happens when Bitcoin's the reason that you were able to buy your home? What happens when Bitcoin's the reason that you're debt-free in 8 years and now you can put your monthly payment towards increasing the quality of life and standard of living for you and your family? What happens when Bitcoin is the reason that life is better, not just because you can buy more things, but because you use the right products and services at the right time in order to take advantage of new opportunities? And that's the real message here. Bitcoin's continued integration into traditional finance, what we call Bitcoin-powered finance, I think is going to redefine how the marketplace looks at Bitcoin. Bitcoin is no longer going to be this risk-on tech stock that you can buy and maybe get rich. It is going to be looked at as a financial tool that helps you accomplish your dreams, that helps you accomplish your goals. And if you're not using that tool, you are like the person using a plastic spoon trying to dig up the ground when the person using Bitcoin as pristine collateral has a freaking tractor digging up the ground. And that realization, I think, is going to lead to the next wave of adoption for Bitcoin. And that's what makes me so excited about not just People's Reserve, but all of the innovators in the space who are pushing Bitcoin forward and making more use cases for Bitcoin, whether it be fixed income, pristine collateral, whatever it is. We're solving real world problems with Bitcoin. And there's very few things in the world that actually solve problems. Bitcoin doesn't need a marketing team because it actually solves problems. You don't need to be convinced when it solves your problems. You actually pursue it because you hear it by word of mouth. Their problem was solved. You want your problem solved. And Bitcoin is the solution. And if we can mature Bitcoins, if we can mature the public's perception of Bitcoin from risk-on investment to pristine collateral and useful financial tool, then I think we're going to actually move to the next leg of the market, and that leads to the repricing I was talking about earlier, because the demand for a financial tool that empowers you is going to be through the roof.
Let's go. Double horn. CJ, thank you so much. We can't top the inspiring speech at the end. So we're going to have to wrap up here on that note. But if people want to reach out to you, where do you want them to reach out? At peoplesreserve.com or your Twitter? Plug your socials real quick, and then I'll wrap up today's show.
Yeah, peoplesreserve.com is the place you want to be. If you're a real estate agent, go to dream.peoplesreserve.com. We are actively onboarding agents across all 50 states. People's Reserve is able to operate in all 50 states. So if you're a real estate agent and you want to service this new pool of demand, which is currently sitting at 250 million of hot buyers that are ready to move today, then please join the Digital Real Estate Association of members, and you will get referrals directly from People's Reserve in order to service these people. So that's one thing. Another thing is peoplesreserve.com. Check out the calculators, and of course, sign up for the platform. It's free to sign up. Sign up, explore, provide feedback. You can get in contact with us through the contact form or through the support center. And of course, follow us on X at CJ Konstantinos and at People's Reserve. Thank you so much, Opti.
All right. Thank you, CJ. Always a pleasure having you on, man. I'm really, really excited to see what you guys build. I'm super hyped for you guys. Finally out of beta, live, already got a lot of demand, man. The future is bright. The future is bright here. And actually, before I leave, there was one thing that you did touch on. Obviously, I'm not to rehash it, but throughout this whole bear market, we've seen a lot of really big headlines, and everyone just keeps asking, like, man, it's the, Bitcoin do something meme. But the builders out there building in silence, like the products are here, and it's really a field of dreams meme here. If you build it, they will come. Yeah, maybe the price is 50% down, but the more of our friends we bring on the show and the more people showing what they've been building, I think it's really starting to show and fulfill one of the things I've been saying. I'm like, guys, I don't think you understand just the amount of building that's been happening, that it's going to take us to the next level. I know it's been quiet and everyone's like diminishing returns. I'm like, maybe it's just because I'm in media and it's my job to cover all this stuff, but I'm like, I just don't see it. I think the next move that we're going to see is going to be, it's going to blow all our minds away. And maybe it's also me hoping because, the last 5 years, we're back at like 2021 prices. I'm like, man, dude, have I wasted 5 years of my life here? Like, when are we going to get the move back up, man? When are we going to get the dopamine rush again? But hearing you talk and what you've built and other friends coming on, it's like, no, it's coming. You can see the foundation being built for the next leg up. And it's just super exciting. It's like, okay, guys, relax. I know the bear market's been brutal, but the builders are building, and that's going to take us to the next level. So CJ, congratulations to you and the team for building this awesome product over at peoplesreserve.com. I'm really excited to see what the next part of this journey means for every one of us here, not just at Simply Bitcoin or People's Reserve, but that are watching, that are hanging out, that are hodling Bitcoin. Relax, guys. It's coming. It's coming. Keep stacking. Keep taking Bitcoin into self-custody. The future is being built right now. So CJ, always a pleasure. We will get you on here soon. Maybe we'll come back. We'll get an update on People's Reserve. We'll get another macro update from you. Maybe we'll dive deeper into some of the, at this point, maybe old topics that you've talked about that new people haven't understood or even heard yet. So thank you so much, CJ. Guys, you already know the deal. We'll be back live tomorrow. Thanks for watching Simply Bitcoin Live. If you like the show, smash the like button, share, all that good stuff. Until next time, guys, have a good rest of your day.
Today's episode was brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.